Apparently, Whackbag had a discussion about our little physics lesson that went on in here the other day about an elevator dropping and what would happen to various objects or people inside that elevator if it was just free-falling. Would the object float around inside of it? Would it stay on the floor? Is it weightless? Does it have weight? Would it hit the roof of the elevator if it was just free-falling or if it was pulled down under some type of power? We had this whole discussion on that for some reason. Well, Whackbag took it upon themselves to get together and have a little debate about this little physics lesson. And who got involved? Stalker Patti, whose name on the board, of course, trying to be incognito and not be recognized or get any attention. Her name is Stalker Patti. Here she goes.
This is in her words.
In her words. I'm not scientifically minded, but I like to experiment with concepts. I took some objects and dropped them and discovered that a heavier object, a book, fell and hit the floor at the same moment as a lighter object, a Beanie Baby. So, picture, if you will, Stalker Patti is in her little hovel apartment.
Playing Mr. Scientist.
She's now, doing ancient experimentation
right.
in her apartment. Who was that? Galileo? Did Galileo do that?
Sir Isaac Newton.
Isaac Newton
Jesus, they got to change the theme song to Opie knows a little something.
No, I know, but
something.
I believe Galileo did the experiment off the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
Oh, no.
Where he dropped two objects.
Is Anthony right again?
Forget Aristotle and fuck Socrates. Here comes Professor
Stalker Patti. Anthony, I want to openly apologize.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I question your knowledge.
Galileo.
By the way, if Stalker Patti's listening, please call the show.
You know who I'd like to talk to even more than her is the poor guy who lives underneath her, who has to hear this fucking dumbbell dropping books and Beanie Babies on the floor all afternoon. Shut up! Head-bodied retard.
And what? How? Never mind.
She was dropping objects. Yeah. Now, ancient experimentation has taught us that it doesn't matter the weight of the object. Gravity, they both react the same to gravity.
She's doing experiments that we did in third grade.
Yes, we did. But the odd thing is, there were some people on Whackbag. One guy actually posted, and I was laughing at this. He goes, as we all know, a lighter object will accelerate at a slower rate than a heavier object. And I'm reading it unlikely. No, as we all know, what? Even Stalker Patti, through her in-depth analysis of this, came up with a different, what would you call that? Help me out there. Conclusion, thank you.
I was going to go with...
I was going to say contusion.
I was going to go with hypotheses.
No, a hypothesis is different than a conclusion.
Yes.
In what way, Anthony?
Well, a hypothesis is just kind of an idea, what you believe is going to happen, a theory. Mm-hmm. And a conclusion is indeed a conclusion, sir.
Forget Aristotle and fuck Socrates. Here comes Professor Anthony.
Thank you, Anthony. I get knowledge every day from you. Thank you.
Obviously, I have some competition here because Patti wasn't satisfied with the book Beanie Baby little experiment. I then tried it with a piece of paper and a book and noted this time that the heavier object fell faster. The paper was caught up in its own wind draft and floated to the floor, around 3 or 4 seconds behind the book. So she actually knows that the wind resistance, the air affecting the piece of paper, changed the experiment. Oh. Is that the Mr. Wizard song? Yes, it is. Mrs. Wizard. It would be gravity itself that should pull an elevator free-falling down a shaft. It's the only type of shaft she has any knowledge of. And that the person inside would be part of the weight of the elevator. It would fall as one unit. If the person were outside the elevator falling beside it in the shaft, even though both were at different weights, both would hit the ground at the same time. If a feather, almost weightless, were falling next to the elevator, it would be caught in spirals of wind and would not respond as readily to the gravitational pull of the Earth. This is Stalker Patti, mind you.
And she's wrong. Both objects would not hit the ground at the same time unless they were in an airless environment.
Right. You're right.
They
In
don't
a
accelerate
vacuum.
at the same rate of speed. Because a feather and a person, that's the same theory.
In a vacuum, it would work, but
Right.
in the atmosphere, of course, the feather is going to be caught up in the air and not fall at the same rate. That doesn't mean that the whole theory is wrong. The objects do. It doesn't matter. Their weight will fall at the same rate. That's just the way it is.
In a vacuum.
Yeah.
Okay.
In a vacuum.
And how about not in a vacuum? They won't, if they're both solid.
If they're both solid, it depends. If something's as light as a feather and really affected by the wind, then they're not going to fall at the same rate. If you take something like a hammer and an anvil and drop them at the same time, they'll both fall at the same time.
Oh, they will?
Yeah.
How about like a brick and a car?
A brick and a
It's
car
like that big of a weight difference.
fall at the same time.
Oh, they will.
Yeah,
Okay,
if you
I
drop
will.
them at the same time, they will both hit the ground same time. Yeah. Absolutely.
Even if they're dropped from a height where the weight can really make a difference in the speed pickup?
Doesn't matter how high. Drop them. No. Both hit the ground at the same time. Yeah.
I actually was wrong about that. Right?
It's all about
And
wind. It's all about wind resistance.
That means you can't hold them and try to, then one hits before the other. That's in ideal circumstances where they're exactly the same height, they're released at exactly the same time, and in a vacuum would be the ideal situation. But
What I'm saying is the way wind resistance will stop a feather,
yeah.
right? Will that wind resistance also work on a solid object to a lesser degree? Like a brick?
You know something? It probably would. The bottom of a car would probably catch more air than a brick would, and maybe that would, or the lighter brick. Who knows? But in an ideal situation, in a vacuum, they fall at the same time. That's what the whole thing is based on, not wind resistance. You're talking about gravity, not an atmosphere and air affecting the thing. So.
Okay.
I also tested some of this by putting a smaller object on top of a larger object, placing a wooden block inside of a larger frame and dropping it, and came up with my conclusion. Talk about what I did and learned. Talk about the what did I learn feature of the show.
Talk about...
Yeah, there. That's what saying. Talk about what did I learn feature of the show here. Please excuse me, I'm not a scientist. Yeah, we were really confusing that. But I had fun today. She's in her apartment experimenting. This lunatic.
I love you.
What's that?
Wow, Eric, that's not the song.
What is that, Eric?
God, that wrecked my whole bit.
Yeah. Oh my God, I see where you were going. That's it.
We'll let Derek do it, Eric.
Right.
Thank you, Eric. You're not needed
Derek
anymore.
does it.
Right.
Derek does it better.
That's Eric with a D.
Thank you, Derek. Derek knows how to find Thomas Dolby. She blinded me with science.
You bet he does.
A monstrosity in motion with her crusty clown face on.
Which there she is in her apartment doing scientific experiments.
She blinded me with her awful body. Science. So I dropped the book and a Beanie Baby. Next, I'm going to try to extract oil from a peanut in blackface. There she goes. Patty doing little experiments in her house.
And did you notice the last 4 sentences? She has an exclamation point at the end of each one. That really annoys
Oh, Miss exclamation point. Well, there she goes. I'm glad she has time to do this. Thought she was working all the time, but apparently she has time to go home and do little experiments.
Is she trying to figure out if the Earth revolves around the sun or if all the planets revolve around the Earth?
Oh, how about that? No, the Earth is actually just perched on top of a tortoise's back, and you could fall off the edge if you go too close to the horizon. Patty, I got another experiment for you. Close all your windows, mix bleach and ammonia together, and breathe deeply. Tell me what your conclusion is after that.
Her next experiment, she's gonna leave her apartment and just start walking to see
there you go.
to see if the Earth is flat.
Yeah.
And if she'll fall over the edge eventually.
Patty, try to reach the horizon.
Right.
Go ahead, keep walking.
I like to see her do the R. Bud Dwyer experiment where she yanks a pistol out of a paper bag at a press conference.
puts it in her mouth and fires.
Yeah, to see what hits the ground, the falling bullet or your brain matter.
All right, Patty.
We got some kooks that listen to this show.
Scientist Patty. They had a whole discussion on that on the message board.